Welcome back inside our proactive newsroom. And joining us now from the Global Markets Forum at the OTC in New York City is Jason Paltrowitz. He is the Executive Vice President of the OTC Marketing Group. Jason, good to see you.
Good to see you, Steve.
Also joining us from the CSE is James Black, a Vice President. James, good to see you.
Good to see you, Steve.
And also Steve Henney, the co-head of business development for the Aqueous Markets. And nice to see you as well, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
It's exciting to have all of you three with me today. As I mentioned, you're at the Global Markets Forum, which is being held in New York City. And since you're hosting, Jason, maybe we'll start with you. Remind everyone a little bit about the OTC Markets Group and really why this forum is happening.
Sure. Well, as you know, we've talked many times before, OTC Markets is actually the largest U.S. stock market for non-U.S. equities. So, our main focus is helping companies from the large names, Roche, Adidas, Heineken, down to the early stage growth companies to gain access to U.S. investors to promote their stories and to be able to grow and flourish on markets that are more right-sized and meet their needs as early stage companies. So we are kind of kindred spirits with the CSE and Aqueous, who, I always say we preach from the same hymnal as it comes to being public shouldn't be painful and finding ways to help those companies tap into what is still the largest investment market in the world, the U.S.
Yeah, and James, you've really done a great job with the CSE, allowing a lot of companies to go public that probably never would be able to do it in the past. I mean, that's really what the CSE was designed and built upon.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're obviously not in isolation in Canada. We have other exchanges that we compete against, and again, we like to think that we best serve small, medium enterprises that want to access public venture capital. So they come to our market in Canada with their primary listing. And then they extrapolate that. They come to the US and use the OTC platform to reach the US investor audience. And it's a perfect marriage. I don't think we've ever papered this up, but it's certainly been a partnership in spirit. And this event today is a sure sign that we're moving things in the right direction for our clients with both of these markets.
Yeah. And Steve, for people who may not familiar with your market, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar in background to the CSE and OTC. I mean, we're based in the UK, but we're a UK growth market, trying to make public markets more accessible to companies that perhaps in the past would have been seen as too early or too small. Yeah, it's that growth focus that we've all got in common. So yeah, it's been a good year so far. Pretty happy with how things are going, and it's exciting to be in New York with some of our issuers with global growth stories, being able to deliver that to US investors.
Yeah, Steve, let's stay on that theme because I want to ask everyone this question. I'll start with you because you just mentioned it. When we all talked a year ago, there was challenging times behind us and the markets were really suffering. It seems to have been a bit of a really different year for everyone altogether. Are you seeing that, Steve?
Yeah, it feels certainly from a retail investor perspective in the UK, and I'm sure that others can talk about their own markets, but there seems to be a real kind of excitement in certain sectors. It's being sector-led at the moment, but I think people are realizing that there's some real value if they look kind of off the beaten path. And, as I said a little bit earlier, this year we've seen record volumes, we've seen record fundraisings. The IPOs have started to come back, and we're now looking at a pipeline of IPOs. If we look into the next 6 months, they're probably better than they have been for the last 2 years.
Yeah. Seeing the same story in Canada, James?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you look at the capital flow into our marketplace, we're $1 billion ahead of where we were at the same point last year to date. So the old adage, follow the money. We're absolutely looking at a much better year because when the capital gets raised, the liquidity starts to be generated from that. So it's a leading indicator of activity in the market. And then you hope with all that activity, you see more listings because you want to see companies come to the market and access low cost of capital. So I think, we're seeing positive signs. There's always going to be challenges. As you mentioned, the last couple of years weren't the best in the small cap space and we're certainly looking at some positive indicators. So I'm cautiously optimistic we're entering into a nice little market here in the next couple of years.
Yeah. And obviously, Jason, everyone looks at the US to see what's happening there. And it's, I would say it's been turmoil. That's one way to describe it with markets going up and down here and there. Are you seeing some stabilization happening now?
Well, what's interesting, Steve, is, we're a secondary market. So we're looking to Steve and James for our supply. And so the supply is back, which is good. But what's interesting in the US and what we're seeing, which is why the event today is so timely, is that U.S. investors are really starting, and this has been a trend for the whole year, really looking outside of the US for opportunity. If you look, I call it the S&P 490. I'm not unique in that, right? Outside the top 10 in the S&P, the S&P 490 is relatively flat or underperforming. And there's such opportunities. If you look to the UK, if you look to Canada, if you look pan-European and into Asia, there's some real opportunity for growth and to look outside the US for alpha. And so if you look at the dollar volume that's traded OTC through the first 3 quarters, we're up 64% in the UK, 62% in Canada, 74% in Germany. And those numbers go on and on and on, with US investors really kind of seeing that what was undervalued for so long is now a unique opportunity, given the frothy 10, if you will, that are really driving all the growth in the US S&P 500.
Yeah. James, why don't we, the next question I want to lead with you, and then we'll get the other gentleman to talk about as well. I find that in knowing all you guys and how the exchanges work and the work that you do, it seems like you're really focused on the companies, and in order to help them navigate the world of the stock market, which can be a real challenge at certain times. Is that a real important part of the work that you do at the CSE?
Look, I mean, we're in a highly regulated line of business. It's hard to differentiate through your service offering unless you have superior touch with your clients. So I think that we need to continue to offer the 3 things that any company who goes public want in return for investing in a public listing, which is access to capital, okay, at a good cost, the opportunity to generate liquidity and access the liquid market for their securities, and the profile, which is what we're doing here, is there's some degree of publicity and profile that companies want to achieve by going public that wouldn't be available to them if they're private. So again, Global Markets Forum is meant to help support them in that. It's obviously a high touch game, and I think today's event, if we can share down the road how all this went today, based on my impression right now, I think we hit the mark. So again, kudos to the OTC team for hosting, but also for Aquis for really showing that we are part of a global group of exchanges and markets that are really trying to support these clients with high service.
Yeah, and Steve, that's a pretty similar story that you're seeing in the UK as well. Lots of questions being asked about yourself and others within the Aquis.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. I think, we've run a capital market support initiative for our issuers, and the core of that is investor marketing, because ultimately, if you can generate interest and you generate demand and everybody has better outcomes, then I think making sure that issuers get in front of investors, almost regardless of geography, but being able to, certainly if you've got a growth market or global growth market story, you need to be able to get out there, tell your story, present well, and hopefully gain that interest and demand.
Yeah. And Jason, I would imagine that yours is a bit different because, going public in Canada and the UK, and then now trying to navigate the US market can be a real challenge. So I know your team worked really hard in this outreach to companies about heading over into the US.
Yeah, the old adage is true. Stocks are sold, they're not bought. And so you're in an environment in the US where you're competing with hundreds, if not thousands of companies. And so you come in as an outsider, whether you're Canadian or from the UK, you're a foreign company. You need to do the work, and you need to be visible, and you need to give somebody a reason why your story is better than the myriad other stories that are there. Our mission has always been that being public shouldn't be painful, that you should be able to access investors in a way that's right-sized for early stage growth companies. And that's why we're with the CSE and Aquis. Like I said, we preach from that hymnal, but it's hard. And the US is a little different than selling your story in the UK. And it's a little different than how you sell your story in Canada. And, for us to be able, again, as a secondary market, to bring companies from around the world to understand that, to give them a forum to tell that story, to be able to access capital and new investors, that's why we get up in the morning, and that's why hopefully we continue to do this for a long time.
Absolutely. Last question to each of you, and as you look at this Global Markets Forum, and Jason, we'll start with you because you're hosting it. Obviously, the companies are enjoying what they're seeing today. They enjoyed presenting. I've talked to a number of them that said they had a wonderful time. What's the message that you send to these companies? I'll ask each of you as they leave the forum. What are the things that you want them to know the most?
Well, the thing to know the most is stick with it. right? Like it's never a one and done. You don't show up, you don't meet an investor, and then you go back to Canada or the US, and it's like, great, I did that, and expect. This is part, and we advise our clients, and I'm sure, I know James and Steve do the same. This is part of a year-long effort, a multi-year effort of consistent engagement, consistent storytelling, consistent making sure you're doing the basic blocking and tackling of being a public company, timely in your disclosure, being timely in providing information and doing press releases and being at events and being responsive to potential new investors as well as to current investors. And that's the message. These are a good anchor, but that's, it's one thing in a much bigger toolkit that you need to be working on if you're going to be successful in the secondary markets.
Yeah. Steve, what are you taking back to the UK? What's the message?
Yeah, well, just that really. I mean, I think I'd echo Jason's points in terms of the importance of companies delivering a consistent message over a consistent period of time. And also, if it gets difficult again, let's hope we turn the corner and better times are ahead. But if it does get difficult, don't get disheartened, stick with it and utilize the ecosystem that wants you to succeed. I mean, I think somebody said earlier today, if you want to go fast, go do it alone. But if you want to do it for a long time, do it together. And I think that's kind of the sentiment that we'd echo.
All right, James.
Hey, Steve, somebody didn't say that. Steve's boss said that.
That's right. He had to get that in. That was an important. For sure.
Smart guy.
Yeah, he's marked that. That's right. So we got that marked out. All right, final word from James in the CSE. What's the message you're taking away from this Global Markets Forum?
The message for the clients and to anyone that'll listen is the reason we're all doing this. It's the word global. So. And it's part of the reason why, just a quick plug, that the CSE recently has agreed to purchase the National Stock Exchange of Australia, is that pools of capital move all over the world, liquidity shifts from day to day, and as exchange operators and market operators, we have to provide optionality to our clients to be able to move their opportunity across the globe, because that opportunity to get funded, to trade, to get that profile will shift. It'll shift all the time, and we have to provide an outlet for that. We're just a Canadian market. We have to have friends in the US, friends in the UK, and an opportunity in Australia. That's what we've noticed over the last over 20 years of operating this business. It's not just happening in our own backyard. And so if you can't offer that global opportunity to your clients, you will get left behind. So that is my message to them. So yes, tell your story, but be ready to get on a plane and get on a Zoom call and tell that story to different markets at different times. That's just how it works.
Absolutely. James, thanks very much for the time. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, Steve, thank you as well. Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Steve.
And James, Jason, as always, congratulations on hosting another forum. Very successful, and really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. Always appreciate it.
All right, there's Jason Peltrowitz from the OTC, James Black from the CSE, and Steve Henney from the Aqueous at the Global Markets Forum at the OTC in New York City.